If you'd like to purchase Magic Online cards at competitive prices, check out our web store at mtgoacademy.com/store.
Great news, everyone. Another die roll 1. And Elvish Mystic into Divination, so pretty easy keep here. We had some horrendous draws, but this one is not one of them. And I'm most likely just going to cast Netcaster Spider first. No real reason to draw cards when you can develop your board position. The Twin Growth has been amazing in this deck, by the way. Didn't win me the last game too, but yeah, I don't know if I could have played differently. It was just unfortunate that I was raised by the whole thing. So this is the card that I passed in the draft. I don't know, we'll see. It's possible that it's actually quite potent, given that my opponent is in the finals. Oh, the wrong order. Very unfortunate. But to be fair, I'll be curving out very nicely with Chasm Skulker next turn, followed by a Twin Growth. Chasm Skulker could actually be pretty insane against blue-white. Maybe not against bounce, but if it grows large, my opponent can't really interact with it. And then at some point, if it dies, I get all these Island Walkers. Okay, so it's time for some spirits. And this also works with regular spirits, so yeah, I suppose that's a good card then. Island is not what I wanted to see. Mountain or forest would have been good. I don't think I can offer the trade here just yet. I could attack with Netcaster Spider, but then I'm still losing my best defense against flyers. Okay, so this might give my opponent a free card or a free play, which isn't a problem, but then I'm gonna encrust it afterwards. It's interesting that my opponent just doesn't care for his Spirit Bonds. I would have thought that you sequence your plays differently when you have this card, but I suppose that my opponent doesn't see the need to do that. Alright, another island is not great, but at least we get to lock down the Master of Predicaments, which is pretty big. I can also attack with everything here except for the Netcaster Spider, because getting rid of flyers on this board seems pretty good. And I don't feel that trading the Chasm Skulker here is bad. And my opponent doesn't have great blocks against the Twin Groves either. I'm very scared of the flyers. I don't think I can beat a charge, for example. So this seems to be my best best turn to turn things around. Also, my opponent does have to respect the fact that there could be any kind of tricks coming down. Pretty sick curve by my opponent. I can't complain. I mean, my draw is great, but opponent is doing some things that are even better. With the Convoke mechanic basically somehow going nuts there. part of the reason for this attack is that I want my opponent to be put into a defensive mindset rather than him just sitting there with dozens of flyers and just waiting for me to die because he draws Sanctified Charge. So I'm giving up some quality here, but I'm dealing 5, and I know that only one of my key cards would go down. So overall, I think I can't be too unhappy about this turn of events. And I still have the spider here, so that hopefully I'm actually taking 0 damage, and the Chasm Skulker now has the time it needs to grow out of control. Oh, the Squid actually has Island Walk, so I am taking at least 1 point of damage if my opponent wants that. Yeah, it's very possible that I underrated the Spirit Bonds a little bit. I knew that Chasm Skulker was good, but Spirit Bonds looks quite potent as well. Oh, great draw here. Shaman of Spring. Into Evolving Wilds. So now the Evolving Wilds threaten to make the Tree Folk a 3/3, but honestly I just want to get the mountain, which my opponent of course doesn't know. I have 4, 5, 6, 7 and then 8 mana, so I won't be activating the Kurt next turn, which is just a bummer, kind of unfortunate. Now ultimately I want the Island Walkers, and I'm also fine with my opponent just chump blocking effectively, just chump blocking the Chasm Skulker. What I'm not sure about is if the Tree Folk Warrior should actually be attacking at all. I think that attacking with Chasm Skulker is fine. Then I'll get the mountain like I wanted to, and then I'm good to go, I think. Because now, as long as the Skulker doesn't get exiled, I'm forcing chump blocks. If my opponent kills the Skulker, I have 4 evasive damage, which work really nicely with the Kurt Chieftain. So yeah, all of this looks fine. It's not like my opponent has a great block here. 5/5 is a lot. Now that I have 2 cards in hand, I guess I can make this a bit smaller so that the creatures are larger. And 1 spirit goes down. That's a good good exchange for me. And clearly in my opponent's interest as well. No plays on 2 cards. Might be running into counter magic here. Or worse, of course. It actually doesn't make sense to attack with more than the Squid Horror, because then 2 creatures could block and the Spirit ones would make one of them indestructible anyway. There is a small argument to holding back the Kurt Chieftain so that I have it next turn with the activation looming. But overall I think it's better to just get it down and hope to draw maybe a divination or a spell that I can cast. It's not like my opponent has so many ways to interact with the chieftain that it should matter too much. So now I'm up to 9 mana. I could have really used that Elvish Mystic. I wasn't aware that I would be looking for mana that badly. So the question is if more than the Chasm Skulker attacks here. I still think that I'm just going to give that trample. So yeah, the 3/3 Treefolk in theory could attack. Let's just try that. I don't want to expose the Kurt Chieftain, and the Shaman of Spring is easily blocked by Coral Barrier. And then, like I said, I don't necessarily want to activate the Chieftain on something which is not the Chasm Skulker. Yeah, even this isn't turning out too great, I think. Because now, because the Spirit Bonds are gonna make the creature I put in front indestructible, it kind of makes sense to activate Kurt Chieftain targeting the Treefolk Warrior. Okay, maybe my opponent read the Kurt Chieftain. I'm not sure. Good. That was a super powerful draw by my opponent, and we somehow got there, which is great. I want the Plummet. I think that's easy. I might want Back to Nature, but I have the Encrusts myself, so I don't think I can support that. It's probably better to bring in Negate. That prevents me from the Triplicate Spirits, counters the Spirit Bond if necessary, counters Sanctified Charge. So all of these should be good. So I like Negate and Plummet. I think I can probably board out some of the ground defense. I don't need ground defense in this matchup. I might almost want to add Ornithopter to have another way of blocking flyers. Forge Devil maybe. Now there's also the Void Snare, but I'm still not convinced. I think the counter magic and the Kurt Chieftain are going to be key. Ground creatures are going to be rather weak. I can probably do without the Primadox for that reason, because the tempo disadvantage is even more of a problem when everything important is happening in the air. And then I guess the Chief Engineer is my worst ground creature. It's not gonna matter that my Meteorite is a bit cheaper, I think. So this looks good. I don't want to do too much fancy stuff like Nissa's Expedition or things like that. And I haven't seen enough targets for Back to Nature to matter. And I'm playing in the Encrusts myself, so yeah, I'm trying it like this. And back up here. This looks great. This looks like a hand where you just fetch the mountain, because I have a single forest, I have a single island, and I'm just quite likely to draw into my second island at some point. But the Kurt Chieftain is one of my best cards in the deck, but also in this matchup, I think. Because of fetching them out, I actually have an interesting decision here. I think I have to keep out Plummet, because it's much more likely that I want to plummet something than negating something. If there's really something I need to negate, it could hurt. But if there is a flyer, I still want to play the Chasm Skulker and so on, so yeah, ultimately it looks like it didn't matter. I know I want to tap out turn 3 for the Chasm Skulker. There isn't much I would play earlier. It just doesn't make sense. So this is actually interesting. The Netcaster Spider is going to prevent the Razorfoot Griffin from attacking. And I also have Plummet Negate, so I can always deal with this. But the funny thing is that this way my opponent will not attack with a Griffin. And if my opponent does, then I'm going to respond with Plummet at some point. Okay, it looks like some spirits are coming down. I didn't hold up Negate for that. I don't know if that would have been the better play. Potentially, I'm not sure. Okay, no blocks. I expected no blocks, but I wasn't certain. So the no blocks is better for me than having to use the Plummet actually. But my opponent couldn't risk just any kind of combat trick blowing him out here. Soul of Ravnica? Oh boy. So it is flying. That's good. Draw a card for each color among permanents you control. Oh, okay, that's actually not super scary. I thought that this would draw cards equal to the permanents or something like that. So I'm gonna plummet that, and then things are gonna work out all right. So this activates for 7. Yeah. Looks like my opponent wants to make this indestructible. I don't think I want this to happen. Pretty nice grind clock, even at this stage of the game. Happy to see it. Because my defenses are pretty much done with. It's a late grind clock, which is much weaker than a turn 2 grind clock. And I don't have protection for my spider anymore. So now if I block with it, I'm probably running into a Sanctified Charge. It's pretty clear that I don't want to play against Soul of Ravnica on the battlefield, at least. So, although to be honest, I found that the best part about the Souls is really their body. The ability is often so expensive that you kind of need to be advantaged on the board to run away with the game. Yeah, I think this is going to be a good encrust target. I really just want to slow down the game here. This is a great draw. Absolutely phenomenal draw. I do have to kind of play a land if I want to keep open both. But I think I have to. It's just too much value not to do it. I actually get a counter if I play the statute, and that way I'm just so much safer from some of the very best cards that my opponent could have. Like the Master of Predicaments and other cards. I'm not sure if I would counter Triplicate Spirits. It seems better to just keep the statue to protect the Netcaster Spider. I think I'm fine with my first pick. This Chasm Skulker has done a lot of work. Oh well, to be fair, my opponent didn't really use the Spirit Bond. Okay, I'm countering it. Perfect, I even get to discard card I didn't even want. So now my opponent is down to 1 card. I've dealt with a lot of the scary cards in my opponent's deck. And I'm winning on 2 fronts right now. I have a winning position in the race with the Skulker, forcing the first chump block here, I would guess. And I have a grind clock that's ticking up. That's already on a 6-turn clock. Okay, that's unfortunate. My Chasm Skulker bit the dust there. So now I'm only winning on the grind clock front anymore. I did the math just there, and it was a 6-turn clock, and it still is, so it seems better to just... Okay, interesting. That is only for 1 card then. I would have expected my opponent to wait with this until it draws 2 cards, but who knows. So I can grind clock for 4 plus the draw is 5, which is a 5-turn clock. If I put a counter on it, it's going to turn to 6, which doesn't add to things. If I put 2 more counters, it's going to turn to 7, and then it's actually quicker. So let's see, 7 plus the 2 is going to be a 5-turn clock. Yeah, I think it's just always going to be a 5-turn clock. Don't see a way to really improve on that. I think that white-blue is a lot less likely to generate an advantage out of the graveyard. I mean, Soul of Ravnik is already gone. On the other hand, white-blue might draw some kind of divinations or cards like that, and then it's actually better to start milling. Looks like I'm taking 3 damage here because Midnight Guard is growing. Oh, interesting. So that could mean that I'm getting charged a pawn. Problem is that I'm not really beating the charge, I think. So let's see. I can get some value by blocking here. And then if my opponent uses the charge, I'm taking 6 plus 5 is 11. Or I need to chump block the guard, and then damage just resolves. I take 2. And my opponent still has all these guys, all the creatures. Elvish Mystic is pretty much worthless on this board, so I'm gonna throw it under the bus. Sanctified Charge is pretty much the card I'm losing to at this stage of the game. But with every draw step, I'm at least in theory getting closer to having something to beat it. Because I can make better blocks, effectively. That's what it comes down to. Yeah, this kind of has to be charge. I don't want to expose the Netcaster Spider. That's kind of my main goal here. If the charge gets cast and I still have the Netcaster Spider, I think I'm in a good position to win. If I draw, like, if I buy myself time with these kind of blocks, I might also get there somehow. This assistant, for example, is one of the cards in blue-white that might lead to an earlier decking. Okay, I think this is bad against Sanctified Charge. I don't know if the rules changed a couple of times, and now it says a base power and toughness. So I would think that it still gets the pump. But then it loses all abilities. So if I wait until the charge gets cast, then I could at least save my spider. No, not even that, because yeah, so turn to frog looks like a horrible draw to me. No matter what I do, I'm losing my spider, right? The Netcaster Spider blocks a spirit here. Or blocks the Midnight Guard. If I block the Midnight Guard, I'm taking, and my opponent has the charge. I'm taking 9 and going to 2, but then I'm just dead to the spirit, so I can't do that. And if I don't block, I'm dead as well. So I'm gonna block a spirit here. 4 damage plus 6 is, well, it's not great. Let's put it that way. I'm not far off from winning with Grand Clock, but I'm 1 turn short. So now I turn to frog this. And I think it's not turning into a 1/1. But otherwise my spider just dies, so it's not really better. Yeah. I was afraid that would happen. Spirit frog. Dauntless River Marshal, the other triplicate spirits. Divination, keeping the dream alive. Yeah, that's not enough. And there's another Sanctified Charge, so that's at least good to know. What to do? What to do? How do you beat the charges? Not with this. Maybe with the Forged Devil. Roaring Primadox. Don't need Ornithopter still. Some of the good cards are already brought in. The Plummet was great, and the Negate is great as well. Turn to Frog is rather weak. Statue of Denial is great, so I could bring out the Turn to Frog, but then I kind of want the Primadox and the Forged Devil, because that seems like the most potent combo. And Forged Devil is going to be good against my opponent's deck, no matter what. My mana turned out to be quite solid, so I don't think that that's an issue I need to worry about. And then probably cutting the Frostlings at this stage. Yeah, this doesn't look bad. I mean, I can have it really depends on my starting hand. If I have the Grand Clock early, for example, I'm in a much better position. But I like how this looks. Time to play first one more time. I think that's a keep. Turn 1 Mystic into Invasive Species. I think it's just too strong of an opening. to mulligan. This hand doesn't have much after that, but a turn 2 3/3 with the acceleration from the Mystic is definitely something. Now, what I do need to do here is to I probably need to return the Mystic. It's just better to recast the Mystic rather than having to wait on land drops. Research Assistant, I have a good answer for that, or at least a good creature to battle with that. And now I don't have the mana to cast Encrust, and I don't have the mana to cast Court Chieftain. So I would be well off drawing a mountain or cards I can cast. And Divination is one of the cards I would be most happy to draw. Opponent does not have a plains at this stage, so that could be quite valuable. I can't play Hunt the Weak into blue open mana. Okay, there's a coral barrier. Second island, so I can actually encrust something, but on this board, I think creating a 4/4 species immediately, getting rid of the assistant is my best line, because of the color screw, but also because a 4/4 is much tougher for my opponent to deal with ultimately. Also, I don't care for the island walk. This game is me racing my opponent and not him beating me with 1/1 squid. Okay, my draws aren't cooperating. My opponent's draws aren't either. My opponent's deck is very heavily white, if you remember from the last games. It also looks like there's no Peel from Reality or something to at least relieve the pressure a little bit on my opponent's side. Okay, Encrust is kind of the worst card to draw, I feel. But now I'm actually encrusting the squid here. It seems weird, but I have 2 of them, and my chances to actually cast it are pretty slim. I don't think my opponent has Appeal from Reality. Would have cast that, so yeah. Forge Devil, yeah, punished for my boarding. So if I attack with Invasive Species, my opponent loses the Master of Predicaments. There's a problem with the Master. I have to guess the mana cost, and if I guess wrong, then the opponent can just play the card, which means that the Master most likely enables some white card to come down. And I have to deny expensive cards because my opponent has Soul of Ravnica, and my opponent has Triplicate Spirits, which could be horrible because then my opponent would actually cast another Triplicate Spirit. Stuff like that could happen. I can definitely win the game without the Invasive Species, but it's a lot easier if I have it. So the question is, how powerful is my opponent's white 4-drop going to be? Or do I offer the trade because I think I'm winning the game if it goes longer? It's really a gamble. We are playing color screw against color screw in a sense, but I'm not complaining here. My draw and my boarding was a bit greedy and I'm getting punished for it. I have a feeling that I should attack because I have a bunch of draws. I have other good creatures to draw. I have a mountain to draw, which would be exceptional. I have divinations to draw into, and the Master of Predicaments is just really tough to play against. There's also the off chance, it's really unlikely that my opponent doesn't block with the Master here. Yeah, it's not happening, but it was a theoretical possibility. So for example, chump blocking with Coral Barrier, or even taking the damage in the hopes of winning with the Master as kind of the best shot. The fact that it took so long to attack is kind of a tell. But on the other hand, if you have something, you could actually also wait long just because you want the Master to block. So it's, I mean, when I'm commentating, it's just something that happens. If I weren't commentating, I would have probably just snap attacked after drawing the uncastable card, leaving my opponent guessing a little bit more. Okay, so we get to trade these. And then I have to reveal the fact that I don't have anything. Oh boy. That would have been the most amazing Gather Courage. And instead, it's now pretty bad draw. If I had that last turn, I think I pretty much would have won. Now I'm putting my opponent on planes, almost, well, basically exclusively white spells. So I think that I could attack here with the Mystic, simply on the off chance that it might be dealing some more damage in the long run. It is the more dangerous play, though. It might make the difference with Kurt Chieftain and Forge Devil. It might also be an absolute blowout if my opponent drew into Appeal from Reality. I'm waiting. I'm not going to risk it. It's not like dealing this point of damage or trading Gather Courage for Coral Barrier is actually amazing. With every turn that goes by, this is just super close. Evolving Wild, so I need to wait one more turn still. And this is what I meant. All these turns would have potentially been my Mystic attacking. And now I need the Kurt Chieftain combination with Gather Courage to win me the game. Phyrexian Revoker. Trying to think. Well, I could call the Soul. Soul of Ravnica, is that what the blue one is called? That doesn't seem amazing. There's also the Spirit Bond card. For that I would have to wait to see what it yeah, I think I'm just saying Soul of Ravnica, I think it is. I'll check. Because the Spirit Bond doesn't look like it's going to be relevant. Alright, let's see if the Revoker resolves. Not that I think that it's not going to. And now I'll pause this again. So I'm calling Soul of Ravnica, although I don't really want to see the soul anyway, so I'm pretty sure it's not the best card to call here. Kind of have to hope that the Kurt Chieftain survives, that it doesn't get exiled because it has 4 toughness. I also don't want to see triplicate spirits, but at least now I have I'm threatening the trample damage from Kurt Chieftain. So yeah, my opponent drew into his plains, which is of course completely reasonable. I drew into my mountain after a while with the Evolving Wilds, and I opted not to go for the Elvish Mystic Gather Courage play, the aggressive line, because I think that I will have a better shot having the Gather Courage in addition to a Kurt Chieftain attack plus activation, maybe. It looks like my opponent is at least not slamming anything. Kinspirit Skirmisher, that's a pretty weak play. If that's the best card my opponent has, I would be quite surprised. Oh, okay, it's just a matter of using the mana efficiently. And then Midnight Guard is going to untap, so that makes it worth it, I guess. Question is, how are your defenses stacking up against Kurt Chieftain? I'll have to do the math, but I'm not sure if my opponent can actually survive here. Grind Clock, here we go. So that's actually, oh yeah, okay. Coral Barrier has 3 toughness as well, so that's 6 toughness, 9 toughness if my opponent just blocks with pretty much everything. Now, there's this weird spell to consider, the Convoke spell that saves a creature. That's something that my opponent could definitely have. I'm not sure if I want to Forge Devil anything. I mean, casting Forge Devil on a spirit, what does it do? My opponent has 6 power. Well, I guess that makes a big difference then. Because if my opponent doesn't have 6 power, then blocking Kurt Chieftain is a lot less interesting. I was looking at the Grind Clock because casting Forge Devil could mean that I'm not activating Kurt Chieftain, casting Gather Courage and Grind Clock. But this game I don't think is going to come down to Grind Clock. Okay, yes. I need to put this on the stack, targeting a spirit. This untaps, which shouldn't do anything. And we get rid of the spirit. Okay. So the next thing I need to think about is with how many creatures to attack. My opponent is on 5, and I have the Gather Courage. So any unblocked an unblocked Mystic is lethal. A Revoker that only has 1 toughness is lethal. Only 1 toughness on defense, basically. And the Kurt Chieftain is lethal. Let's see, it has 8 power potentially. So it needs to be blocked by at least 4 toughness. Which means that if my opponent is Psychic and manages to play around everything, he blocks the Chieftain with Guard and Spirit, the Mystic with Coral Barrier, and the Revoker with a Spirit. No, that doesn't work. You need to block the Revoker with more than 1 toughness. So you block the Barrier blocks the Revoker, the Spirit blocks the Mystic, and Midnight Guard and Spirit block the Chieftain. Now, the thing is that blocking Chieftain with Guard and Spirit makes absolutely 0 sense. Is there and then what are the alternatives? If the Barrier and the Guard block the Chieftain, which still doesn't make sense but only loses a single card, then the 2 spirits block the Mystic and the Revoker, and then the Revoker is lethal because it gets up to 6 power against a single spirit block. If the Chieftain is blocked by, yeah, and that's pretty much it. It can be blocked by 6 toughness. It can be blocked by 4 toughness, and that block just doesn't make any sense. But it would be like the line to survive. Or it's blocked by less, then I win. Or it's blocked by more, then I win as well, because then one of my other creatures is gets through. Your choice. This is a great situation. Of course, it's even greater that I'm in the position of doing the attack, but it's actually kind of rare that you just enumerate all the blocking options for your opponent and conclude that it's super unlikely for your opponent to find the winning line, find the winning block. it's just not a block that makes any sense. Out of the, I mean, dozens of blocks available, most of the blocks lose the game immediately against the chieftain activation. So if you assume, which is reasonable, that your opponent finds a block that lets him survive, it's not going to be the block that throws away 2 creatures to the chieftain and a creature to the pumped revoker and trades with the mystic. It's just not. It's just, out of all the blocks that look like they let my opponent survive, it's among the most unreasonable ones. Okay, so this is a reasonable block with the coral barrier, because it's preventing damage, and if I want to deal extra damage, I'm only taking down 1 creature with that. Also, my opponent is making sure that if I pump the chieftain, the revoker and the mystic go down, which is a reasonable block. This looks fine. My opponent might even have the Convoke spell to make a creature indestructible again. So the one block that would my opponent let my opponent survive is to move the spirit over here, and then I pump the revoker with the chieftain, and my opponent loses all of his blockers, and I only lose the mystic while dealing a point of trample damage. So this block is a lot better, given that I don't have the Gather Courage, which I didn't have when I attacked with the invasive species against Master of Predicaments. So yeah, my opponent is still thinking about this, but this looks like a solid block to me. And my opponent locked in the block. So there is Devouring Light. If my opponent has that, to kill my Goblin Chieftain when I go all in, I'm just pretty much dead. I still think that it's a lot better to go for the throat here, try to win the game, and not play around a Convoke uncome that my opponent would have to have at exactly this moment. So I'm gonna try to deal some extra damage here with the activation. And also the Gather Courage. It looks like damage is resolving. Whew. Yeah, there was one out for my opponent, and he didn't have it. I also saw almost the entire deck in game 2, so there was no way of really playing around it, and also there was just no reason to play around it. And yeah, ultimately our deck got there. A Grind Clock being an absolute MVP, but also the Kurt Chieftain, of course. Now, I'm still thinking about this first pick. I think all 3 cards would have been reasonable. Maybe the disadvantage of going for a dual colored card are just not as high as the upside of having this super powerful uncome in your deck. On the other hand, Chasm Skulker was really, really nice as well. What a great start to M15. I'm happy to be back, and I'm happy to bring you more and more videos, of course. I'm Simon Gotzen, recording Simon Says for MTGOacademy.com. See you next time. Bye bye.